Fushiguro isn't Sasuke. Okay, with that out of the way, quick question for you. What exactly happened between this scene here at the beginning of the story and this scene here at the end of the anime's first season? The two mirror each other pretty closely. Both times, the first-year students are sent to investigate a seemingly average case without the support of other Jujutsu sorcerers. Both times, Nobara gets abducted, and both times it turns out that the curse they're facing was actually a special grade that consumed one of Sukuna's fingers. And yet, everything is different. This time, our protagonists voluntarily enter the curse's domain instead of suddenly being trapped in it. In the second scene, it's not Fushiguro but Itadori that goes after Nobara, while Megumi actually stays behind to fight. Both of them have clearly grown stronger, and together they take out two of the special grades in a very impressive manner. Now, these two missions are clearly set up to show the growth of our protagonists. While Itadori has clearly grown in power and mentality, the most drastic character development is Fushiguro's, who doesn't run away like last time, but stands his ground and ultimately defeats the previously unbeatable special grade by letting his own powers loose, all with a manic grin on his face. So, what's happened here? Who is Fushiguro Megumi? Why does his role as the typical rival / deuteragonist to Itadori work so much better than in many other stories? And why is he so important to both Sukuna and Gojo? This is the story of Fushiguro Megumi. On the surface, Fushiguro Megumi seems to be your typical rival character. While Itadori appears to have a light mood, is extremely extroverted, and runs mostly on emotions and instinct, Megumi seems to be the classic contrast to that. With spiky dark hair and a quiet and calculating personality, he seems to be the classic trope of the cool but brooding rival. The introversion to Itadori's extroversion. The dark to Itadori's light. Fushiguro isn't Sasuke. Because just as Itadori subverts trope after trope of your typical shonen protagonist, Fushiguro's character, unlike Sasuke or Bakugo, actually comes a lot closer to some of Togashi's characters, like Kurapika or Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho. But as always, Akutami has taken a number of successful character tropes, merged them, and made a character that is much more complex and intriguing than the sum of its parts. Now, as you might have already realized without some dude analyzing anime on the internet telling you so, the central theme of Fushiguro's character is the shadow. As we will discuss in a second, this goes both for his jujutsu abilities as well as for his personality and character arc. Megumi is a user of the 10 Shadow technique, a rare ability inherited from the powerful Zein family, allowing him to control up to 10 Shikigami, which are basically cursed spirits that can be tamed and used by a sorcerer. Now, the real feat of this technique is not the ability to control these Shikigami by themselves, but the fact that Megumi is able to manipulate shadows as a medium, summoning his creatures directly from shadows and being able to store objects or even himself within them. We actually see him discover this feature in real time in this scene here. Senpai, なんとかなりそうです. And this is actually not the only time that it's Sukuna who inspires him to get stronger. I think it's clear that Sukuna is not interested in Megumi for his Shikigami, but for the powers of his shadows. And so I'm pretty sure that we'll see him discover new features and applications of this ability in the near future as well. On top of this, Megumi actually likes to get his hands dirty, engaging in close combat together with his Shikigami. This actually gets him further respect with Sukuna, as these sorts of powers are usually used at range in the Jujutsu world, with the user at a safe distance from the battlefield. Now, although Fushiguro's jutsu technique allows him to control shadows, in terms of his character, a deeper darkness within actually controls him. When we first meet Fushiguro, just like Itadori, he has a weird tendency for self-sacrifice. For instance, we know that Fushiguro has a trump card up his sleeve that was a threat even to Sukuna at the cost of Fushiguro's own life. And yet, the number of times we see him almost using this last resort in the first season of the anime alone is absolutely ridiculous. Pretty much every single enemy that manages to get Fushiguro in a bit of a tight spot, he considers a worthy target for his trump card. And this fact highlights two other dark traits of his quite well, I think. The first is that he lacks self-esteem and is extremely insecure about his own abilities despite their clear power. While both Gojo and Sukuna are confident of what Megumi's capable of, we're talking special grade Jujutsu here, Megumi himself, whenever he's challenged, just tends to give himself up for the sake of the rest. This makes him different from Yuji. While Yuji likes to sacrifice himself as a last resort after having thrown in everything he's got, Megumi just willingly gives himself up. This is best shown, I think, in the baseball match against the Kyoto students. The scenes where Gojo comments on Itadori going for the home run and Megumi sacrificing himself for the team are pretty straightforward metaphors for their general mindset, I think. And looking a bit deeper, the second thing that Megumi's kamikaze attempts lay open is that he has absolutely no sense of self-worth. The underlying reason for this is, of course, his childhood. After he and his stepsister were abandoned by their father and left as orphans, it left a deep scar on his heart. As a result, and frankly quite understandably, he developed severe abandonment issues, making him very cautious about forming new relationships. And yet, once these relationships are actually formed, he would do anything for the people he holds dear. Now, Gojo plays a very interesting role here. While we know that he technically took Megumi in, saving him from being sold to the Zenin family, it doesn't seem like he ever played a real parental role for Fushiguro. The relationship between them is definitely deeper than that of teacher and student, but not deep enough to call it family, at least as far as we know right now. And as we can see from the small flashback we get, Gojo, consistent with his persona, is terrible with people. And so he didn't really adopt Megumi as much as he scouted him as a potential student. He helped him because he saw Megumi's potential to become a strong ally in the future. And his apparent lack of empathy probably just enforced Megumi's sense of being worthless. Which is tragic, because Gojo clearly cares for Megumi, but was never able to show it in a way that gave Megumi any sense of self-worth. Instead, Gojo pushed him to get better with the only thing he knows. Strength. Now, interestingly enough, this has manifested in probably the best case scenario for Fushiguro. Instead of hating and blaming everyone around him for his terrible childhood like Sasuke, or trying to prove himself or getting attention from others, he has developed a truly selfless desire to save and help those who in his eyes deserve it, even at the cost of his own life. In an ironic twist, while Itadori tries to be the ultimate selfless person for selfish reasons, you can check out my analysis on him for more on that, Fushiguro, due to his lack of self-worth, simply wants to be useful to others, and thus actually is the truly altruistic one of the two. This pretty unique dynamic becomes very clear in his encounter with Kamo during the Kyoto exchange event. Here, Kamo claims that both of them are the same. And this may actually be true. Both dark-haired, quiet introverts, both born outsiders to parents who were rejected by their respective clans, and both inheriting their respective clans' highly prized jujutsu technique, earning them the attention of both the Zein and the Kamo family respectively. They're also both strategists who try to act logical but ultimately tend to be swayed by emotions instead. And both became jujutsu sorcerers in order to protect the people that they most care about. Megumi his sister and Kamo his mother. So why does Megumi reject this statement by Kamo so strictly? After all, the poor guy simply wants to be understood.
違います。急に怖いこと言い出したな。
The real reason here is a moral one, giving us some more insights into Fushiguro's character. Kamo basically argues that as members of the big clans, they are expected to think in terms of what is best for the family and society as a whole. Thus, there is no room to view Itadori from a human perspective. Sukuna is a threat, and thus Itadori, as his vessel, must be eliminated for the good of all. Kamo uses this utilitarian argument and his duty to his family to justify a morally questionable decision that he personally does not agree with. However, to find acceptance within the family and within the jujutsu world, the rules must be obeyed. Fushiguro, however, despite also appearing to be someone who's rational and who values rules, actually is a lot more like his teacher Gojo and evaluates issues based on his personal impressions and gut feeling. We see this play out pretty nicely in the very first 2 episodes, where Megumi first cites the official jujutsu regulations that mandate him to exercise Itadori, and yet he had already decided all along, based on his personal feelings, that he wanted to let him live, because he saw Itadori as a good person. And yet, while Kamo's morality is clearly faulty here, Megumi's is also based on a wrong assumption. Similar to Gon in Hunter x Hunter, Fushiguro has a very simplified view of human morality, dividing people into either good or bad, worth saving or not worth saving, all based on his personal impression of them. Itadori and his sister are good people no matter what they do. The prisoner Yuji wanted to save, or all the curses, bad guys. And honestly, it's not really hard to see why he would think that way. Having been abandoned by both parents and unable to help his sister given her condition, Megumi doesn't really know how to survive in the world, but pretends that he does, because no one else will take care of him. And on top of that, you can add the fact that he was basically forced into jujutsu, first by his dad selling him, and then by Gojo intervening just to ask him to come work with him instead. And since he actually is an incredibly kind and caring person at heart, this simplified way of looking at people helps him protect himself from people leaving him again. As a result, Fushiguro tells Itadori that he might end up saving people who will kill someone in the future. The irony is that Fushiguro has of course done this as well. Saving Itadori has led to more death and suffering, and the same might be true for other people he deems to be good. In fact, he and Itadori have a quite similar approach to the central moral question of the story. What does it mean to live a good life worth living? For both, it's saving people. However, while Yuji thinks about this in terms of quantity, saving as many people as possible, Fushiguro looks at it in terms of quality, who he thinks is worth saving. And yet, despite this difference in perspective and the apparent Naruto-Sasuke dynamic between them, the relationship between Itadori and Fushiguro is not only a major twist on the shonen trope, but actually the most positive aspect of the story.
言わねえよ。
おい、それ伏黒に言うなよ。自分が助けた人間が将来人を殺したらどうする?
Megumi and Yuji aren't rivals, but partners. They support each other and keep the other from falling apart under their respective darkness. And so, despite their contrasting personalities, they are actually the closest to each other and understand each other the best, with the same fixation on saving people. In fact, they've only ever had one argument pretty much, right at the start of the story, with their different ideas on who to save, but then never again. And even then, they respected each other's moral views, even if it contradicted their own.
お前の真実は正しいと思う。でも俺が間違ってるとも思わん。
And so, after Itadori's death, Megumi hands the prisoner's name tag to his mother to honor his friend's legacy. As a result, both of them push each other to grow without seeing the other one as a threat. And in direct contrast to the Sasukes and Bakugos of the world, instead of refusing to acknowledge his partner, Fushiguro always readily gives validation to Itadori and defends him, because protecting the other is a major drive for both of them. They form a sort of yin and yang as they complete each other and are pretty much two sides of the same coin. In a way, their relationship is represented really nicely by Fushiguro's black and white wolves. Just like Yuji, the white wolf dies during the Cursed Womb arc, and yet its powers and strengths merge with the black wolf, making him stronger overall. And similarly, Yuji and Megumi increasingly take on traits from each other as the story progresses. At the beginning, Megumi is cold, dispassionate, and entirely selective with his sympathies. Yuji, in contrast, is warm, friendly, and willing to sympathize with almost anybody. And yet, over time, Megumi takes on more and more of Yuji's emotional, confident, and extroverted self, while Itadori gets a grip on his emotions, becomes more calculating, and is actually able to make harder decisions. And so, in a world that has mostly provided nothing but pain and hardship for both of them, they make each other better and stronger people.
でもまあ、伏黒の怪我が大したことなくてよかったな。ピザも食えてるしな。
And this brings us all the way back to the initial question. What happened between these two scenes with the special curses? The answer is, Fushiguro has become a lot more like Itadori, and finally has the capability to not only believe in himself, but also be more emotional and let those emotions become a strength.
怒りは術師にとって重要なトリガーだ。
Or, as Megumi puts it very thematically fitting, finally being able to spit out his shadow. This unusual rival relationship is one of the main reasons why Jujutsu Kaisen works, and why it feels so unique and yet familiar compared to other shonen stories. Another really important relationship is that between Yuji and the sorcerer, whose appeal is maybe only topped by Gojo's.
残念ですが、ここからは時間外労働です。
And so I strongly suggest that you watch Nanami's video right here. Thanks for watching. Peace.